So we will be doing a quick overview of the equalization platform, which is at ratiostudy.org. If you do not have credentials for that application, you can email our support. It just has to be from a town email. So if you're a contractor and you need access to a town, you just need to have someone at the town request access for you. So we'll talk a little bit about the platform, then we'll talk about MS-1 submission, what's changing in 2020, how to data enter an MS-1, how to upload an MS-1 using a data file from your CAMA provider, and then finally, how do you finalize your values for the MS-1 and send that off to the state. And we'll also cover how to request an extension, which is a popular topic these days. So what's new in 2020? There are two things. The first one is reporting if you have adopted the Electric Energy Storage System exemption, which is RSA 7285. So that's just the new optional exemption. The biggest change is that the reporting for your utility values has changed, and this is to incorporate the new formula in statute RSA 728D, which prescribes a formula for valuing distribution assets. So the reporting is changing from the utility and the assessed value to the utility and the value for distribution provided by that formula, the value for other distributions, so in other words, distribution assets that are not subject to that valuation formula, generation value, transmission value, and then the total assessed value. So that's the value that you've always been reporting, and that is the one that was required. So given everything that's going on, that is the one that's required. That total will be used for equalization. So the other ones are there if you're able to input it, but it's that total assessed value that is the most important, and that's what you've been submitting the whole time. So we'll take a look at that as well. So how do you get started? So if you're requesting an extension, you can start there, and we'll take a look at that. If not, you have two paths, and we'll start on the top. You can log in and just manually data enter using the application to put in your values for the MS-1. It'll do some validation checks. If you go down on the lower track there, you can also do a data upload if your CAMA provider supports that. I know a lot of you use Avatar. They definitely support it. Some other vendors do as well. So you can upload the MS-1 file right out of your CAMA, upload it into the system. There is a step of utilities matching. So this is if the utilities in your system, if the names don't match the names that DRA uses, you have to pick from a list of known utilities. And then it will import all of your data, and you get back on the main track of validating your entry. So there are a number of required fields and calculation checks and so forth, which you need to get through before you can do your final submission. When you do your submission online, then you have to print out a copy of your MS-1 and get that signed by your assessing officials. So assessing officials being the select board if you're a town, or the board of assessors or assessor if you are a city. The reason we have to do that secondary step of getting the signed copy is there isn't a good method in statute to e-file on behalf of an entire board. So seeing the signatures of all the board members lets us know that they have seen it and have approved it. So let's get started. Let's look at extensions and doing the MS-1 data entry. So bear with me for one moment here as I switch over to the application. So this is our test server. None of this is real data. So all I've done is logged in just to orient you to the software. This is where you would go if you were verifying sales for equalization. And this is where you would go to answer questions once you have verified sales. So as we come on to equalization time, we'll be having trainings on that. But this would be where you go to start verifying your sales for the year. But we're going to talk about the MS-1. So you could either click on the MS-1 tab or click continue down here on MS-1. So all of these continue buttons correspond to the tabs, and they just give you a brief explanation of what is in that section of the application. So we'll go over to the MS-1, and you'll see all of the municipalities that you have access to. You see some of these have view because they've already been submitted. Some of them have not been started, and some of them have been started, and we can continue with that filing. So let's tackle requesting an extension first. And if you only have one town here, this will look a little bit simpler. This would be a view if you operated multiple towns, and we have our village districts down here below. They work exactly the same way. It's just a smaller form. So this is where you would file your MS-1 fees for all of your village districts. And you see if you have multiple towns, it lists where that village district or which municipality that village district is in. So let's take a look at filing an extension first. You can request an extension right over here on the right-hand side. So we'll go ahead and request one. Very simple process. All you have to do is select a reason for your extension, whatever it might be, give a brief explanation, and then indicate the date that you want your extension to. So once we put that in and click submit, that gets sent off to DRA for approval. So you'll get notified once they have reviewed and approved that. So that's pretty straightforward. So let's go ahead and take a look at manual data entry. So I'm just going to click start here. And this is just very simply how you would walk through and do your data entry. So we'll just quickly walk through the form. It's a fairly large form, but we'll quickly walk through it and I'll highlight the areas that are different. So here we see this would be reporting our values for an electric company. You pick the electric company, and it's got those values that I was talking about. So your distribution that you valued with that new formula, distribution assets that aren't valued by that formula, any generation assets, transmission, and again, your total assessed value. So this is the most important one. This is the total value of the utility. So you have to key that in. And this is the required field for this year. So of course we have our gas utilities, our water utilities, and then other utilities if you have them. Going into credits and exemptions, we have our veterans credits. So you have the amount of the credit, which would fall within the range here, the number of individuals receiving the credit, and the estimated tax credit that you'll be granting. And it's going to check that against the maximum allowed, which is the amount of the credit and the number of individuals. So you can put all of those in, hit recalculate, it'll recalculate everything for you. I also want to highlight, we have these question marks on all of the sections. This will take you to help specific to this area. So if you have a question about a specific area, you can just click this question mark and it will go off and bring you to some help about that specific section. So that's on every page, and we'll bring that up a little bit later as well. So we have our disabled and deaf credit and exemptions. You have both income and asset limits for single and married individuals. So you can report that here. We have our elderly exemption. So your reporting here is of the number of first-time filers for this period, then the totals in each age group, the amount of the exemption per individual, total exemption granted, and then the max allowable. And again, income and asset limits on the elderly as well. Then you have your optional credits and exemptions. Most of these have been around for a while. This was the new commercial industrial a couple of years ago, but the rest of these have been around for a little bit. Moving on into property reports. Here is your reporting of current use, land use change tax, your conservation restriction easements, discretionary easements, discretionary preservation easements, your farm structures and land under farm structures, your TIF districts. So these are your tax increment finance districts. Only 20 or so municipalities have these, so not all of you need to worry about this. But you simply put in your district name, date adopted, the original value, unretained, You can also put in notes and attachments. So a lot of people will have a spreadsheet that does their TIF calculation. So you can put this here so that it's filed centrally. And if there's ever changes of staff, you know that it's attached to the MS-1, so you can always go find it again. And TIF is automatically calculated now, so you don't have to worry about subtracting that off the final values. It will take it off automatically. So we'll just remove that. Payments in lieu of taxes, the PILT tab. So this is where you record any state and federal forest payments in lieu, White Mountain National Forests, or add any other of the two types of payments in lieu of taxes. And this is a good example that I'll bring up later. If you are trying to add a payment in lieu and you can't seem to make the system do it, that would be when you call axiomatic tech support. If you don't know where to categorize your payment in lieu of taxes, that would be calling the Department of Revenue. And we'll hit that at the end as well. Okay, going into the summary. So we record the assessor. You also add your municipal officials here. So this add line for municipal officials will populate the names on the front of the form that will become your signatories. So we have our land summary here. So we can enter these values, and it's showing us the current and previous year and difference for each of the columns. And this is exactly how DRA looks at it. So they look for differences that don't make sense. You have your reporting of buildings. You have your reporting of utilities and timber. You have your exemptions. You have your optional exemptions, and here is the new one, the electric energy storage systems. So if you have that, you could just enter that right here. So that would be where you put that in. And then finally, our totals. So this is just going through the math of getting to the values that will be used for your tax rate and for equalization. So line 21C, this is used for the county tax rate. And then it tells you where your local and municipal tax rates are, and then your state education rates. And the verbiage here explains to you exactly what it is. So the last one for state ed is net valuation without utilities or TIF. So we have all of that there as well. Once again, you can do save and home to save your progress and return to the MS-1 home. You can do save and recalculate, which will just save the values and leave you where you are. The submission will run through all of the checks, and then viewing the MS-1 report. If I just run that out here quickly. First time the report runs every day, it takes a minute here. But this is the standard reporting in the equalization system. You can export it out to a number of different formats. In this case, I haven't put in any municipal officials, so this is blank. You'll notice it's very heavily draft watermarked. You can export this out to a number of different formats for printing. PDF is probably the easiest. And this will look very familiar, just like the old MS-1 PDF and the Excel before that. So that's always available to you for printing. Again, very heavily watermarked with draft until you actually submit in the application. Last thing here is you also have notes. So if anything is going on and you need to leave DRA some notes about it, you can do that here. So this is very helpful for communicating with them. Particularly if something is very different than it was last year, it might be helpful to just put a note to explain why, just so that they understand why there's that big difference and don't have to reach out to you. So I'll do a save and home now. And I'm going to switch back over to the PowerPoint for just a minute. We're going to talk about doing the data upload. So some CAMA platforms do allow you to export XML directly out to load into the system. And the trick to this is the XML upload is only available if you have not started data entry. So it has to be a clean start if you're using that XML import. Once you've imported it, you can adjust it, but it's just you have to be starting from scratch. It gets a little bit intense if you've started already doing stuff and then you want to update it with XML. You just have to start with your upload and then you can modify it. The second piece here was the utility matching that I mentioned. So here's the screen, and we'll take a look at this in a moment. But as you upload your XML, it will import all of the data. And then the first thing it will do is check to see if the name of the municipality in the data file matches what you're trying to upload it to. So we see here, we are in the town of Barnstead in the system, but the XML file says it's from Bridgewater. So you've got your red exclamation point, just letting you know that this appears to be the incorrect file for the municipality that you're in. And then down at the bottom, it's verifying that left-hand drop-down is the electric company as DRA knows it, and then on the right-hand side, the name in your data upload. So in this case, all three matches, so you don't have to take any action. If any of them didn't match, you would just have to operate that drop-down on the left to pick the appropriate utility. And then the time saver is if you update the name of the utility in your CAMA to reflect exactly what DRA calls it, you won't have to do that step again. So there's a little bit of a correction that could be done there to save you some time in the future. So let's just take a look at that quickly in the system. So you see here, we don't have the XML upload button in Merrimack that we were just working in. So if you do go into your municipality and then you realize you do want to do the XML upload, you can just delete that progress that we've made. Now we're back to a fresh start. We can upload our XML. So you would export it out of your CAMA, save it to your local computer, navigate to where you saved it, click upload. And again, our municipality names match, so that's good. And in this case, all of our utility names match as well. If they did not, you would just get an exclamation point and you would pick the correct utility from the drop down here. So we'll go ahead and apply the upload. And then we can go in and see what was loaded in for Merrimack. So we've got our utility values in, and you see this upload populated those fields. If we go over, we've got all of our credits and exemptions. And again, all of this is editable. So if something came in a little bit inappropriately, you can make corrections here. So that's very handy. So this is a big time saver to get the data in a little bit more simply. We'll switch back over to the PowerPoint to talk about submission, and then we can open it up to take any questions. So submission's fairly simple. You click submit on the MS-1. It will do a number of data checks. There's quite a few. It goes tab by tab. So the system will check to make sure all the required fields are done, all the calculations tie out. So those maximum exemption values, if you're reporting that you're granting more than the maximum that you're allowed, it will prompt you to go fix that. So it'll run through all of the checks and prompt you to fix things that are required. Once you've fixed everything, it will bring you to this e-file statement, which basically says that this is who is submitting the document and that you believe it is correct to the best of your knowledge. So you'll put in your name and contact info and click submit. And this will be the e-file. So now it's e-file, DRA has it, they're notified that you have submitted it, but your filing is not complete. It's not complete until you actually get those signatures from your assessing officials. So you e-file, then go grab that report, print it out. It will not have the draft watermark anymore. So you don't want to have anybody sign the draft watermark version of the MS-1. You want to e-file it. The watermark will go away. Print it out, get it in front of your assessing officials for their signature. And then you can actually scan and upload, and that will complete your filing. So DRA can begin to do their reviews once you've e-filed. They have all the data. But they will not finalize their review and pass that on to set tax rates unless you've submitted the signature page for the MS-1. So do make sure that as soon as you e-file, you get on the agenda to get that paper copy signed, you get that scanned and uploaded. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So we've just done all this. Let's see if we can submit. Probably can't. There's probably something missing. But let's take a look. So this is running through all the required fields, checking all of the calculations. This is really ensuring that if you're able to submit, that everything is okay. Just need my assessor name. We'll try to submit again. And we made it through. So we would simply put in first name, last name, good contact number, and email, click the checkbox, and click submit. So pretty straightforward there. Couple of other items here before we open it up for questions. I mentioned that report has a draft watermark until you submit. We talked about those help icons, the blue question marks. Those are area-specific help. We also have the help button in the top right actually goes to our support portal. So that has a lot of information about everything in equalization. So that's helpful as well. You can also access recorded trainings there. So the help button actually is kind of helpful, I think. So that's a good place to get information. Where else to get information? DRA's website is a good resource. Your equalization auditor, so Natalie, Cindy, or Linda. And again, if you have a question of, say, how do I categorize this tilt that I have? Where should I be reporting it? That would be called DRA. If you know what you want to do, but you can't seem to make the system do it, you forgot your password, anything like that, that would be axiomatic technical support. So we do have email support, telephone support, and then our support portal down below where you can submit tickets directly. So don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have technical questions, or reach out to DRA if you have more legal and reporting questions on what you should be doing.